Welcome to Talking Devils again this week, your leading independent Manchester United podcast. This is the One the Lot pod. We're on to episode 6, I think it is now, on our weekly Monday night schedule. Things are coming along nicely, and if you are joining us again this week, thank you very much. I'm your host, Harry Tor. I head up Fan Owned United, a Twitter and Instagram page. I myself have got a season ticket in the Stretford end, and essentially we like to give content just about obviously the club, but also put up little videos of going to games for fans who can't go themselves, for the global fan base especially. And as per usual, I'm joined this week by the two gents, Stephen and Peter. Peter's a lifelong United fan and a football author, and Steve, likewise, lifelong United fan and has had his season ticket at Old Trafford for over 25 years. Their handles are also on the screen. Please give them a follow. Also, if you're joining us live on YouTube, do send in a comment, a question. They are, we will go through all of them and are welcome. And if you are following on the podcast platforms after this is done, please like and subscribe and share. So, right, gents, nice to catch up with all of you guys this week. I say all because Peter, unfortunately, couldn't join us last week. Great to catch up again off a victory. That's always a good start. Great result, I'll say. Maybe not so overall performance again against Bournemouth. That 1-0 win. At one stage, we were actually qualified for the Champions League until, unfortunately, Bobby Firmino, the Liverpool player who will be leaving them this year, frustratingly scored in the last minute. But even still, with that victory, we only need 1 point to get into that top 4 place from the last 2 games. So, Peter, we'll start with you. What did you think overall of that performance over the weekend?
I think you kind of said it nicely there, like good results, iffy performance. But I suppose at this point of the season, like realistically, you just want 3 points, and we'll deal with the afters from there. But yeah, it was nice to see like us like so many times of late, like we've especially against West Ham and Brighton, not getting a goal when we were on top. So we started quite well, got the goal, and just failed to build on it really, which kind of being the story of the season. It's weird how little goals we score, and even away from home, we've only scored 22 goals in 19, which is the lowest since Van Gaal's reign. So that kind of tells you, like, it just isn't for us scoring away from home. But yeah, it was good just get the win. We're pretty comfortable in the first half, and then like De Gea bailed us out a few times, a few good saves, and yeah, I think Bournemouth didn't have much to offer, but at the end of the day, it was just getting over the line, and yeah, more or less just 1 point to go, and we can finally banish the Europa League to memories.
Exactly. That will be, again, much welcome to get rid of the Europa League and see some Champions League football at Old Trafford, which I'm sure, Steve, you're welcome as well, and hopefully enjoy some Champions League nights next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Every Champions League night is a great night, as is any European competition. But you really do want to be in the Champions League. You want to play the best, play the best teams. Any player wants to play in the Champions League, so you either keep your players who want to play in the Champions League, or you're able to attract people who want to play in the Champions League. And we've been linked with a hell of a lot of players this summer, but if we were 6th or 7th, we'd be linked with half of those players. So Champions League football is a big draw for everyone, players, fans, even the TV. You get so much more money.
Absolutely.
Being in the Champions League. So, touching on the Bournemouth game, once again, as Peter said, early goal, really happy about that. But away from that in the game, we had 21 shots, and I think the XG was 2.25. So once again, quite heavily underperforming the XG. We controlled a lot of the game early on. Second half tailed off a little bit. Was impressed with the centre-back partnership. Varane, Lindelof looked solid. It's no coincidence that since Varane's come back, we've got two clean sheets. Once again, which on the clean sheets, I think we're going to touch on in a little bit. Casemiro finishing the season strong, fantastic finish. Quite lucky, I think. I think the ball from Eriksen didn't quite make it, but got quite a little touch from the defender who didn't quite clear it, and then he did really well to improvise and finish it off. And then going into the second half, I think a lot of people kind of slowed down. It's been the story of the last couple of months. We seem to start quite well and not get the goal. But this time we did. We slowed down, but bringing Garnacho on. For me now, he's a full-on upgrade on Sancho. He came on. He injected every bit of life that we probably had in the second half into that game, and we managed to see it out. So I was actually in a bar in Venice watching the game, hiding from the rain. Yeah, hiding from the rain in Venice this weekend, and it was the only Irish pub in Venice, and they actually had the United game and the Liverpool game on different screens. So I think the Liverpool game was like 7 minutes behind the United game. So obviously, once our game finished, they were still losing 1-0. So there was a couple of Scousers in there who were giving us a couple of looks, and then they equalised in the last minute and started giving it all that. But they equalised and we won. So again, bridging or clearing the gap a little bit more, and as you say, 1 point needed.
Yeah. You talk about the XG. It's something that just come up time and time again. So many chances, not enough goals. I mean, just looking at the last few results, we lost 1-0 to Brighton, but even before that, we beat Villa 1-0, then lost that Brighton game 1-0, lost to West Ham 1-0, 2-0, we beat Wolves, and that was another 1-0 win. So the goals just haven't been there. I think our overall goal difference is either 11 or 12.
Harry, sorry, can I just say before the next point, it was a Saturday again. So
I mentioned
on the last week's podcast, it's a Saturday, so United win. It's just a shame we don't have any now until the City game.
Stephen picked up on this worldie of a stat where we don't lose on a Saturday. I was like, he's gone through the records of this season, and we have not lost on a Saturday. So
It feels we've barely played. Have we not lost on Saturday?
We've not lost on Saturdays. Or the last time we didn't win on a Saturday was in October against Chelsea. The next game on a Saturday is City in the FA Cup final. So
might be the only thing we have in our favour, the Saturday schedule. I was thinking the first Saturday we played the season was the Brentford 4-0. And I remember I was on like a family holiday, and my mum was like, "Don't ruin this for us." So it was, But since then, that's an interesting one, yeah. Because we played so many Thursday, Sundays.
Yeah, Thursday, Sundays,
yeah. So we won't need to worry about that next year with Champions League. More games on a Saturday, more wins. I'll take that. Moving on to our next major point. David De Gea has got himself a Golden Glove for his Premier League clean sheets this season. I say his, but point obviously gents raised earlier is the difference Varane has made coming back into the team, and us being able to get these clean sheets, which in itself for the team, I mean, is a pretty major achievement, right? To get the most clean sheets. But it is a shame that the kind of the award or accolade directly goes to De Gea. Although he has pulled off some great saves, he did again pulled off a couple of great saves against Bournemouth as well. I think it is very much a team kind of effort to get those clean sheets and to get those kind of results. And the only thing, obviously, you want every player to have confidence, etc., but you don't want that confidence to, kind of over cover, I guess, the mistakes that have been made. And what I wouldn't want is this Golden Glove for De Gea to think that, oh, I'm the best Premier League goalkeeper. I've got the most clean sheets, so therefore, these mistakes I'm making are just on an odd occasion, and they don't really have an effect on me. That exactly is not the case, because the games where he has made those mistakes have resulted in us losing games, losing points, but also, as we saw in the Seville game, being knocked out of competitions. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. You want your players to get these accolades, but at the same time, it's a bit of a strange one with De Gea. I mean, Steve, we'll start with you. I mean, what are your thoughts on the Golden Glove overall, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great accolade for De Gea, of course, but obviously it reflects a little bit more on the team. We've defended a lot better this year. We've conceded a few less goals, which is of course really nice. But I think there's an award in Spain. I think I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's awarded to the keeper with the fewest goals conceded, and I think that's a little bit more of an accurate reflection rather than clean sheets. We could go one game conceding one goal and then the next game conceding 7 to Liverpool, and it works out the same. So I think with the amount of goals conceded, I think that should be the reflection on the keeper, the top keeper in the Premier League. So I'm not sure who's got it at the moment, but I imagine that Nick Pope's up there, and I think I know who I'd rather have in net. So again, it's a great reflection on him. He has made some great saves this season, and he deserves some recognition. So yeah, all the best to him.
Yeah. Like I said, hopefully, just doesn't overshadow the mistakes from where he needs to improve. But I mean, that's a pretty fair point. City away was 6, Liverpool away was 7, Brentford away was 4. I mean, that's what 14, 15 goals right there in 3 games. But what about you, Peter? How have you received the Golden Glove, and do you think it will be a positive or a negative, really? For him to get that award,
like you said, the double-edged sword, and you wouldn't want him thinking that too much into it. I saw a quote from him saying, "I've had a great season and all this," so it's a little bit like, don't let it go to your head. And like you said, it doesn't overshadow all the mistakes he's made, and that has been kind of an issue with De Gea in the past. He doesn't really seem to take criticism. He kind of is quite stubborn and I'm good at these things and that's that. So yeah, I think I echo what you're saying. It's very much team award. The guys like Martinez, Varane, Victor Lindelof since come in has been really good. I think the kind of guys credit to, and obviously Casemiro's influence just sitting in front of them has been huge. I think we're just such a team of contradictions, like you're saying, letting in 7, 6, 4, a couple of threes in there. It's bizarre that we have the most clean sheets, but it's kind of when it does show Ten Hag has the right defensive system down. We know how to defend, and when it goes bad, when it's not functioning, it just completely capitulates. So, I think it's a positive. And without those clean sheets, there's zero chance we would make top 4 because we've had so many 1-0 wins.
Yeah. We just had a question here from Sonny Sharma. Thanks for sending that in. He says, "Hi guys, David De Gea needs to go, or at least not first choice. He's so poor with his feet that the team decides to sit 10 yards further back, and we're further more under pressure." Those are fair points in regards to sitting further back, and he is obviously very, very bad with his feet. I think the general consensus is it would be ideal to get a new keeper. I know that would be my choice. I think it just, with De Gea's contract situation, leaves things slightly difficult for Ten Hag as to what he exactly does. To just leave his contract, not extend it, and let him go for free, or does he keep him and maybe give him an extension, try and sell him next year, buy another keeper, keep Henderson as well? There's a lot of questions around that. So I guess we'll have to see in the summer, but some strong opinions in regards to having De Gea potentially leave. So moving on, I wanted to focus a little bit on Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Slightly more relevant this week was that the Sunday Times Top 100 Rich List was released, and he's now jumped up to number 2. So he is the second richest man in the UK with a worth of 29.688 billion, to be specific.
Nice.
And and first and foremost, the reason why I thought it was relevant is because I'm pretty sure when the bid process first started, I think his initial wealth was thought to be around 14 and a half. I think maybe that was based on last year's number. And because he obviously owns Ionis, a huge petrochemical firm, that has obviously grown quite exponentially because of oil prices, etc. Also, his bid potentially might be to have part of the club rather than all of the club, which has been taken maybe negatively. And this kind of information that he is worth quite an increased amount kind of gives a lot more hope as to potentially moving the Glazers on slightly quicker than we first imagined, because I thought, a guy worth 14.5 billion, if he needs to put aside about 6 towards a football club, that's quite a lot of money. That's, over a third of his wealth. How is he going to deal with that? Now, this does kind of change things. And I mean, in regards to a transfer kitty, £1 billion still goes a long way, over a few years. So we would just need a 30th of his wealth in terms of transfers. But also, I just wanted to list, guys, a few of these points which I read in an article just to give a bit of a background around him. Because one thing which I certainly, haven't had is too much kind of an understanding of, the actual backgrounds of the bidders, because especially Sheikh Jassim, there's hardly anything on the internet. I kind of Googled a couple of times. There's no information, very, very, very vague as to who he is. He heads up a bank. But this article was pretty interesting, sometimes even funny. So I'm not going to read through the whole things, but the point I picked up is they mentioned he was a part-time mountaineer and is a beekeeper. Obviously mentioned his wealth has increased because of energy prices, which skyrocketed. Now, it also said the conglomerate of his businesses stretch over 3 continents. And he says that Ionis is the biggest company in the world that no one has heard of. They produce anything from pharmaceuticals to the plastic that is made for Lego. So that's a pretty wide range. He remortgaged his house 30 years ago by 140,000 to start this business. Pretty brave guy. Grew up in a council estate in an area called Failsworth near Manchester. If you guys are from Manchester, slightly closer to the east side, towards Etihad, keep on going, and towards that direction. When he was smaller, he used to hang around Hull's football ground and sell lottery tickets. So he's entrepreneurial from quite a young age. His ownership of Ionis is actually 60%, which I didn't know of. The rest of the 40% is split between 2 of his business partners. But he also funds various projects. One is called the Daily Mile, which is an initiative for children to get running. Also, another point, obviously, I knew that he owned Nice, but I didn't know that he owns another club in the Swiss second division. I think is Lucerne, if I'm pronounce that correctly. And a couple of little funny bits. It said on his DVD player, it's Chariots of Fire. On his turntables, it's Roadhouse Blues by the Doors. In his garage, he's got a Porsche 911R, F1 Ferrari car, which has been driven by Schumacher, and a Mercedes G-Wagon. So, I mean, these are just little interesting points, considering, he could potentially own our football club. And to be honest, getting this kind of information and background about a potential owner, I personally think is a positive, because the more you know about someone who's coming into the club, the better. And I don't know if this was the article which was sent out by the Sunday Times. I don't know how kind of unbiased it was meant to be, but it does paint him to be a picture of just an overall kind of nice guy, a hardworking chap that, how they say the kind of American dream. He was the kind of, great British kind of dream, in that he grew up in a council estate, worked his way up, worked really hard, and is now, the second richest man in the country. So, I mean, getting, understanding those kind of points and highlighting those points, do you think does that make your perception of him any different? Yes, Peter, we'll start with you.
Like you said, it's just interesting to know, like, he's obviously there's no such thing as like a nice billionaire or an ethical billionaire, because he obviously has some dodgy things with fracking and environmental issues, and pretty sure he's pretty staunch Brexiteer. So there's lots of, like, there's pros and cons to everything, but it's interesting to see, like, oh, he's an actual real person, and there's like this character and a personality to him. Whereas, like you said, like Sheikh Jassim doesn't really feel like a real, like, is he real? No one's really seen anything of him. He didn't come to the stadium. And that's besides the point of, like, not wanting state ownership. Personally, I wouldn't be endorsing that could ever happen to the club. And not wanting to be involved with a country that has really, really poor human rights records. So, yeah, it's interesting to see that regarding Radcliffe. And then it was funny as well, like, obviously he owns Nice, like you said. Dante, the ex-Bayern Munich player, came out and was saying it was basically a warning of sorts, being like, oh, he said he do all this, but he hasn't done that. But I think, yeah, I don't think there should be that much notice taken of what's happened at Nice, because he has put money into them, and he's tried to do things, and he's given, like, people control to do things. Obviously hasn't gone to plan as yet, but I think he's definitely the right person for United. And the stuff around, like, the ownership and buying 100% and all that sort of stuff, he's a businessman and he's pragmatic, and he knows, like, he's being strategic, being like, I can get control of this now, and in 2 years' time clear them out. If it's not, like, plausible to get 100% ownership of the club today, then get it in 2 years. And I think that just has to be taken into account, especially when you're dealing with a massive asset. It's not the same as, like, buying a car. Like, it's buying a £6 football club. So, like, there's a lot of Twitter chat, but you're like, well, none of us really know how, like, big business works. So I think he's going about it the right way, and the kind of, and also playing into, like, what do the Glazers want? Like, these are the people I have to do business with, as opposed to, I'm going to try and, like, shake the rooftops and all the fans will back me, and then it's all false promises. So I think he's just pragmatic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I wanted to mention it, because of this, new figure as to what his potential, worth is and wealth is. I think that strategy sounds a lot more kind of attractive as a fan now, because it seems like he can essentially get them out quicker. Gopal has got a question. Thanks, Gopal, for tuning in. He asked, what do you want from a new owner other than lots of investment? Steve, I'll put that to you.
Well, I think communication is one of the key shortcomings of the Glazers in the last forever. So, they've never spoken to the fans to any certain extent. They've never made anything clear. They've never, they don't come to games. They don't show their face. I think an owner, they should be maybe not the face of the club, but if you're going to be backing the club, you need to be seen. So I think it's a pillar of stability. If you have someone who is visible and is always kind of around, as you mentioned, Harry, he's from Manchester, so it's clearly not just a business deal for him. There is some emotion to it, and I know all the narrative around him being having like a season ticket at Chelsea. I think that's probably just because he likes football and he was living around there or something. Who knows? But he's a United fan. You know, he grew up around the corner. Failsbury isn't too far away at all. So, you know, being a Red, being a United fan, owning your boyhood club, especially in today's climate, that's what you want from a new owner. To have some guy from Qatar who people have been saying, conspiracy theorists saying he's an AI generated picture. So some people, you just don't know who these people are. But this lad who's from Manchester, who's become the second richest fella in England, whose net worth has doubled last year. If his net worth keeps going up by £15 million a year, then £15 billion a year, then I'll be happy.
Happy days, yeah, exactly.
I know inflation, is a factor, but I think when Abramovich took over Chelsea, I think he was worth about 14. So looking at Ratcliffe now at 29 point whatever, it's significantly deeper pockets than what we thought, and I think the only real staggering boundary would potentially be FFP.
Yeah, exactly, and like you boys both mentioned, he's a smart businessman. I don't think he would be taking over part of the football club if he wasn't running the football club. I doubt who in their right mind would say, look, here's £4 or £5 billion, I'll take 60% of the club, but your shares are gonna, hold greater weight than mine, and you'll still make the decisions. There's no way he would let that happen just for his own sake. It just doesn't make business sense. And I just think all of these are just points which are coming out, just massive positives. And I'll be honest, in my kind of viewpoint and mind is I'm shifting towards the SJR bid, if I'm honest, between the two. Because like you said, with the other Qatari Sheikh Jassim bid, there's 3 stock pictures I always see. One is him at Old Trafford, also looks slightly photoshopped. There's no truth behind this. It's just my personal views. There's one at Old Trafford. There's one with him wearing the native, Arabian outfit on a desk, and the other one Sky Sports News use for their transfer news when he's in a kind of business suit. And outside of those 3 pictures, I haven't seen any others, and where can I find them?
Black and white photo is
exactly.
It's also strange that he allegedly wants to buy the club, that all that foundation and stuff, and it quite obviously is being driven by the Qatari state. So if you wanted to buy the club, like you're saying with communication, Stephen, no one's heard anything from Sheikh Jassim. It's all sources. You want someone who's going to be going to matches, or at least has a presence at the club, not some mystery. Is he real? Is he not? Who is this person taking over the club? And because we've been through 18 years of hating the owners and wondering why they don't care. You don't want someone who's just off on the other side of the world, just kind of use United for their own personal or national gain. So
And just one quick thing to finish us off. I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, even if he didn't want to come out in person and actually visit Old Trafford, he could have at least released a little press conference or a video or something and said that, this is me, this is what I'm about, this is why I want to buy Manchester United, XYZ, 5 minutes. But he didn't even bother to do that. So let's see. But he's the one that's got all the cash, supposedly. So hopefully we'll have a bit of clarity as to which way this bid is going over the next few weeks, because again, it seems like the Glazers are delaying. No surprise there. Moving on though, a couple of bits of sad news, I guess. Jones and Axel Tuanzebe have left the club this week, or are not renewing their contracts. The reason why I say slightly sad, one from my perspective. Tuanzebe, potentially, I always thought he could have been part of the squad. I thought he had the ability to do so. And with Jones, did kind of get labelled slightly as a bit of a player to laugh at. And I read his little statement that he made about leaving the club, and I kind of felt sorry for him in the kind of words he used. And yeah, to be honest, we kept him for this time, but it wasn't his fault that the club gave him a contract and he took it. It's not like he was there and he was the one that was made to stay on his terms. So yeah, Steve, I guess we'll start with you on these points first. What do you think about both of those departures?
I think it's two cases of what could have been. You see a lot of raw ability from Axel Tuanzebe, who will start on first. He's had a couple of really good games, but then never managed to string more than a couple together. He's had maybe one really good loan at Villa, I think it was, and then never kicked on from there. Again, injuries. A lot of players can't handle the rigor on their body from Premier League or elite level football, and unfortunately, both of these lads can't play football games. So there's no value in keeping them, and it's a sad story. Phil Jones, he just can't stay fit, and it's a real shame. You wouldn't really wish it on many people, maybe Erling Haaland, but you just these guys are talented lads, and to not be able to express your talent is a real shame. Although Phil Jones has been at United for 12 years, and I think he's made 200 appearances or something like that, and it's just not enough. Back when he got his last contract, I think most people were kind of scratching their heads, and he's made 3 appearances in the last couple of years, and unfortunately, he's cost the club more than he's made for them in value. And yeah, of course, it's time to go, but it's a sad case of what it could have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about Tuanzebe? Any thoughts on him not renewing a contract and leaving in the summer?
It's probably a similar case. If you can't stay fit, you're not reliable. I'm sure if Anthony Martial's contract was running out in the summer, he'd be let go as well. It is just that case. If we employ a football player who can't play games, what's the point in having him? So yeah, maybe he's not developed as much as he should, because the game time is what you need to develop. So being the age he is now versus what could have been 4 or 5 years ago when he started picking up these injuries, it's the right time, and it is a shame, because it would have been a really nice story to have another academy player coming back, especially in central defence. We've not had any proper academy central defenders for as long as I can remember, really. So yeah, it's a real shame, but it's the right thing to do, and hopefully, as we spoke about last week, we can exercise the sale of potentially Harry Maguire as well as those two, and then as with all of those wages saved up and the transfer fee from Maguire, we can get in another centre back, hopefully in the mould of Kim Min-jae for that £42 million. So 3 out, 2 which don't play. So it's not exactly like we're going to lose too many squad players. It's a lot of wages we're saving. So yeah.
How about yourself, Peter? Any views on those 2 points?
Yeah, it is just what could have been for both of them. And like Tuanzebe, it's always like you always have that one night in Paris, October 2020, when he really managed Mbappe well and matched for pace. But that was the moment being like, I'll be unearthed. As this guy being unearthed, he was quite rated coming through and everything, but he just never kicked on from there. And I always remember that same season when we drew 3-3 with Everton, when they just had like a long ball. He came on and instantly scored. It wasn't his fault, but it never really happened for me at United. And it'd be interesting to see where he goes now, because like as Stephen was saying, like he just can't stay fit. Like he cannot put games together, and same with Phil Jones, and even the Phil Jones, that 2019 contract he got was it's real. Like if anyone ever asked you, like Ed Woodward, like what did he do at the club? Gave him that deal. I think he's made like 13 league appearances since in 4 years on like 100 grand a week, and you couldn't really blame Jones, like you said. And it's not like he didn't want to play. Like there's been players before, like the famous case of Chelsea around Winston Bogart, who just refused to play, leave. Like Jones wasn't training. Like he hasn't been able. He'd fail a medical if he tried to join any other club. Like no club would sign him. So I do think he'll end up retiring realistically, which is sad. And it is sad. Just he's another one of those players. Like it felt like he left like 5 years ago. But the real Phil Jones left United a long time ago, and he's another player. Like when he first came through, he looked fantastic, and like he made his debut. Like it was him, Smalling, Johnny Evans were like the future, and didn't work out for all of them for different reasons. But it's mad. Like another one was a player who really post Ferguson really struggled. Like along to like Welbeck, Cleverly, these guys they kind of lost their. I don't know, like they lost like the father figure. The club kind of fell apart, and these guys were in their early 20s, and there was no guidance. So. Yeah, I think it's sad, but it's time just to move these fellas on, and hopefully they can be joined by a good few others in the summer, and start being a bit more just ruthlessness. I know it has been the case for the last 2 summers that players only seem to leave when their contracts run out at United, but it's thanks and on to the next basically.
I guess a couple of just brief points. One. Obviously, I've read Sir Alex Burke a few years ago, and one thing he always said is there's always a set of players where you end up keeping them. It gets to a point where you hurt them by keeping them because they can't, they absolutely love the club, they'll do whatever they can, but they're just not at that standard. And I think, unfortunately, Phil Jones was that type of player in the end, where he was just in and around the club but couldn't actually play. But like you said, people laugh at that tackle, whatever it must be a tackle. When he was sprawling on the floor and he, got it out with his head against Arsenal. It just goes to show, he'd literally do anything for the club whilst he was playing. He would put his body on the line, which not many defenders do. We wish obviously Jones and Tuanzebe, best of luck going forward. Absolutely. And finally, just to finish off today's pod, we're playing Chelsea on Thursday, and there's a few points there which are pretty interesting. First and foremost, obviously they've announced that their new first team coach is going to be Mauricio Pochettino. What do you guys think of that? I guess, Steve, we'll start with you. Interesting appointment. Interesting that Pochettino has decided that he's happy to move to Chelsea, considering obviously he had that great spell at Tottenham.
Yeah, I think Chelsea, they've got a lot of money that they're willing to spend and can spend. I don't think they can possibly have a worse season than they've had this year. So for him, it's only going to get better. He's going to get Nkunku in next season. I think that's already been announced. Who has been setting Germany alight for the last couple of years. So that's another really good focal point for their attack. I think coming off the left, but they've got a lot of players that they need to sell. And a lot of players that they need to add. And I think maybe the manager might be a bit cutthroat, but I think if you're going to join a club with all of that money and a great amount of players that they already have, it's a bit of a project for him potentially if he gets the backing of the owner, and hopefully, if he's got a bit of sense about him, he'll sign a 5-year contract with a massive sacking clause. But I think with Chelsea, they can't do any worse than they have done this year. They're only going to get better, and fingers crossed they don't. But I think it's quite an easy choice. If it was me, I think I'd rather manage Chelsea instead of Tottenham.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Chelsea undoubtedly have the potential to get back to challenging for titles, purely because they have Todd Bowie who can put in unlimited funds. But I think they've gone to show so far that it's no secret that they've personally, I think they've done it in the worst possible way, because there's been no strategy. There seems like there's no structure in place, and literally they're bringing in any player that Todd Bowie fancies. I mean, I genuinely think they bought Enzo Fernandez just because he wanted a World Cup winner on his team. Like, literally as simple as that. I don't really know, who actually wanted Enzo Fernandez. I'm not saying obviously he's a fantastic player, but a central holding midfield player for £100 million is a little bit excessive. Me personally, I don't think Poch potentially would be the best appointment really going forward, purely because I don't think he's, again, headstrong enough to deal with a owner like Bowie. I think obviously as a football man, he'll get that team playing, but they'll get to a point where he's going to want certain players to come in, and he's going to want a certain style of play. And I literally think unless something drastically changes, the way which players are brought in at Chelsea are just going to stay the same. It's literally, here's a bunch of players that the owner wants, go and play with them. If there's a problem, that's your issue. Because this is coming from a guy who fell out with Thomas Tuchel because Thomas Tuchel didn't want to sign Ronaldo. You know what I mean? So there needs to be from my perspective, a major shift in the way things are done from the top. Not that I'm too overly concerned, of course, but I just think Pochettino is just not the right man, because I don't think he'll be able to manage that. What do you think, Peter?
It's just really hard to know. Chelsea, they're impossible to predict. I personally just can't see Chelsea, like as you said, like regarding Bowley and so on. It's just hard to see that guy like getting it right, or kind of like he did mention like I've made mistakes, but a bit late today he was saying after he spent 600 million. And on the transfers as well, like I don't think they're gonna be able to buy players unless they sell. Like they really need to get rid of like a good 10, 15 players, and so many players need to get rid of. But there is the basis of a decent team there. They've got like, I think Poch will love Mount. Probably sell off Gallagher because just Mount light basically. But they've got some good young players. They've got a decent back four. Need a new keeper and so on. It's a weird one from Poch. I thought Pochettino had his affinity to Spurs would be strong enough that he'd be like, I'm not going to go to Chelsea, and like upset their fans. And like thoughts with the Spurs fans, like they got the two Chelsea has-been coaches coming their way, and their best manager of the last 30 years is going to Chelsea. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to work out really, but like you said, like it can't be any worse. And it's like anything, he needs time, but he also needs results. Like he needs to show like pretty quickly that he's got something about him. And I've always rated Pochettino really highly. Like I thought his Spurs team was quality, and that was just the lack of backing that really hampered them. Like every time they came close, they didn't add. And I wanted him at United for a very, very long time. I kind of was wanting him over Ten Hag at the time. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I really think he needs that job to go well, because his stock has dipped a good bit after how PSG went for him. But I suppose everyone does bad at PSG, and it's interesting. Will Chelsea become that thing now where like no one can work there, so it doesn't matter? Like your reputation remains intact after. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know. Like it's Chelsea, they're a TV show at this point.
Yeah, let's see. Like I said, I personally don't think it'll work out, but who knows? And I guess more importantly, and they lost to Man City C over the weekend, and which you would hope means that we can carry on our unbeaten run, and let alone 1 point we can pick up 3. And Casemiro spoke after the game against Bournemouth, which we really didn't touch on. What a fantastic goal that was. Outside of the performance, what an amazing goal he scored. Definitely showing his Brazilian traits there, shall we say, that little bicycle kick. But what he said was, we're not going to sit back and, hold on for a draw. We're going to go out, focus on getting those 3 points, which you would expect, right? Based on current form, that is what you would hope anyway. Are you going to be at the game, Steve?
Yes, I'll be there. I'm going with my dad. If you could give me the draw now, I'd take it because that's all we need. Of course, I think we're going to win. If I was a betting man, I'm not a betting man. If I was a betting man, I'd put money on us to win. But all we need is 1 point, and if you're giving me 1 point now, I'll take it because that is qualification for the Champions League. So I'm sure stranger things have happened than playing Chelsea and Fulham at home and losing both. But yeah, as I say, it should really be us who need a result against a Chelsea team who look to have down tools. They're just waiting for the season to finish, and hopefully we can pile on a hell of a lot more misery.
Yeah. Peter, what do you think we'll get out of the game? Prediction on the result?
Like I said, it's hard to predict things with Chelsea, but I'd be shocked if we didn't win that match based off how good our home form is. And just really that it's right there, being like, win this game, secure top 4, and then maybe make some changes for Fulham. Brett, you want to rest Varane for the cup final against Fulham. You only play him twice in 3 days. And I don't even know what team Chelsea are going to play. I actually watched the game. I covered the game yesterday for work, and it was actually really, really hard to do because it was one of the worst games I think I've ever watched.
It was awful.
It was City, like you said, City C, and the goal was just Fofana just passed it to City, and then like 1 pass, 2 passes, goal, and it was legit like watching. It was the definition of an end of season game. There's nothing to play for. City of the league wrapped up. Chelsea don't care.
They weren't trying, were they, at all?
Like City, I think the City players were like, I don't want to get injured. Like, I'm lifting a trophy in like an hour. It was just like, we'll do our bit. The only person who was trying was Raheem Sterling because he was getting some grief off the fans and also had to feel for Sterling a bit. Being like, regardless, City obviously like 115 charges, so on, so don't be giving them much praise. But the fact he went from that, lifted titles to finishing 11th, and I looked at the Chelsea lineup and it's really hard to work out like what's their best team. Like who Lampard is just kind of throwing lads out there and being like, we'll give you a shot this time. And I just can't see Lampard doing anything against Ten Hag. So I think we should be fine.
Good stuff. Well, yeah. I think that wraps us up for this week. As mentioned, if you are listening back on the pod outlets, do please give us a follow, subscribe, share our content. If you do leave comments, we will pick them up for next week. But do join us then, same time next week at 7 p.m. Next Monday, where hopefully we will be discussing what potentially we have to come in regards to the Champions League next season, and also the build up to the FA Cup final. So thanks again, gents, for joining this week, and we'll catch up next Monday.
Cheers, guys.
Nice and cheers.
Cheers.